I am so excited that we decided to sit down together and have a conversation. We talk to each other more than I think either one of us wants to admit, and our teams, know each other. And I with so much respect going back and forth how we both, do our, handle our businesses and represent our clients. We talk a lot about what we do to each other and also those, to our clients. But it's sometimes hard to get that out and share what we do and how we do it and why what we do matters to the outside community, and to sit down and actually have a nice back and forth conversation with some fun questions and answers, some dumb questions and answers, and some really meaningful nuggets of value, I think is a great way to be able to kind of inform the general community of insurance agency owners of what agency focused and legacy advisors do for them.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's do it.
Let's jump in.
Let's do it.
There's a number of questions that I've gotten about, what a fractional CFO would do and the services you offer. So some of my favorite ones I wrote down. I want to run them by you, and you can maybe do the in reverse. You can share, some of the questions you've heard about, what we do.
Yeah.
First, to just kind of lay up one was like, why would an insurance agency hire a fractional CFO?
Yeah, it's a great question because, the average agency is maybe 7 employees, maybe they're bigger, maybe they're smaller, but the reality is most independent insurance agency owners don't have a background in finance. So numbers are not their forte, people are their forte, coverage is their forte. So the reason you hire anyone is to augment your weaknesses and really strengthen the team you put around you. And for me, a lot of agency owners want some confidence in the decision they're making. They want clarity in where should I be focused, and we can provide that. We can help them understand how their business is doing from a financial standpoint and help clarify that, simplify it a bit, and give them the confidence they need to move forward with all of the information, rather than sometimes feeling like you might be flying blind if you don't have that clarity. So that's really the key thing we hope to do as an extension of their team.
Yeah, and I also imagine that a majority of insurance agencies around the country aren't large enough to warrant having a full-time CFO on the team.
Yeah, in fact, I even hesitated calling it Chief Financial Officer because it'd be crazy to have that in a small organization, but I didn't have a better way to communicate what it is. But never would you be able to hire someone at that level. So taking it as a fraction makes a whole lot more sense. And what's really cool is being able to work with multiple agencies. You get a purview that the average agency owner doesn't get. You get to see how different agencies are dealing with some of the same challenges and help someone weigh the pros and cons in their own agency by having that purview. So fractional is what, in my mind, makes it so much more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you had an internal CFO, they're only going to have the insight of your business and maybe businesses that they've represented in the past or worked with in the past. But from your perspective, you're seeing hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of agencies that how they tick and all the benchmarks that come with that.
Yeah, which gives me the ability to help clarify some of the questions and say, the average agency might respond this way, or they might contemplate these types of decisions in order to navigate forward, and an internal CFO might not be able to do that. So
what's one of those, just on that same topic, what's one of those questions that you feel like most agency owners, before they work with you, they don't know the answer to, but they should, and they ask you, and you feel like by offering that information, you're really leveling them up?
Yeah, I think the biggest asset inside an agency is also your biggest expense. So it's typically around people. What should I expect from my people? When should I hire? What are the benchmarks for efficiency and productivity? That is probably the area we spend a lot of time and energy, especially as the environment's changing around us. So as you add complexity with technology and virtual assistants and AI, that question becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And how do I weigh it? So I'd say that is one of the biggest things. How do I accurately and how do I set my agency up and staff that appropriately and allocate my resources appropriately? I think that's one of the biggest things we wrestle with.
That's great. Yeah, I know that when we were in that process of building the business, one of the burning issues we always had was forecasting with payroll and with staffing associated with the client base that we didn't even have yet, but we knew we were going to have. And that's really hard to do on your own.
Yeah. And a lot of agencies will say, I'd like to double in size in the next 3 years. And putting that on paper of exactly what that would take, what's your growth rate, what retention rate do you need to be, and showing what would have to happen inside the agency from a human capital standpoint, but also from an expectation of performance is much easier to execute if you can see it, but most agency owners really don't know how to forecast that. So they enlist us to help put that plan in place and show what those trigger points would be.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Is there typically either a size of an agency or where they are in their process or the profile of the owner that makes the most sense to work with you?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, actually. And I think we have a target market. There's no two ways around that. But the reality is, whatever size you are, whatever age the owner is, it's really about the mindset. Are you looking to go from A to B? Do you want advice? Do you want to think differently? Do you want to surround yourself with people who can challenge your thinking? And if that's the case, you definitely need someone on your team that's going to think differently. If you're happy with the status quo and you are thrilled with where you are, I don't know that you want our team helping you. So I think number one, you have to have the mindset that you want to go from A to B and you're not 100% sure. With the team you have today, you've got everybody in your tool chest that in order to get you there. Then there comes, sure, you have to be at a certain size. We charge a fee, so you need to have the financial wherewithal in order to be able to pay that. Engaging with us is not an expense, it is an investment, and typically you see the performance of your agency change. You will always see the value of your agency change as long as you're taking the advice. And so I can't really say you have to be this exact size from a staff standpoint, age of an owner, years in business. It really is a mindset. And we've had the gamut. I want to work with agents that want to have as many options as possible and they want to grow and perform. So
I know that when we were growing our agency, one of the limitations was we wanted to be really aggressive with our growth and our strategies.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to be so aggressive that we could put ourselves in really financial harm.
Right.
And if we had a service like Agency Focus and working with someone like you and your team would have given us the backing of confidence that we can be super aggressive and here's things we need to look out for. So when you're having those conversations with new clients, do you feel like they are asking for that same thing, basically? Like, I have these goals, I want to be aggressive, but I also don't want to make big mistakes. Like, can you help me avoid those mistakes?
Yeah. So it's funny that you said a couple of things that we haven't touched on yet. And some agents are, I want to grow. And I'm going to buy as many leads, I'm going to add as many producers, I'm going to do all these things, but I also want to grow by acquisition. We can help balance that because honestly, it's difficult to do both. Like if you're investing in your infrastructure and your staff, you might be taking a lot of the profit and putting it towards building organic growth engine. But if you also want to grow by acquisition, they're going to look at the debt load that you have and you want to be able to position yourself to execute well on both. So yes, I think many are saying, how do I find the balance? What do I need to do? Are there things that I need to clean up so I can open up the gateway for me to be able to execute on both? And when will I be ready to do one or the other or both? So thinking about how to manage debt is a big part of what we do, and manage cash flow and honestly support growth in either format. So I think we're also able to be pretty objective about it rather than someone who's in it and maybe more emotional about some of those decisions.
Do you sometimes have to tell someone you're doing a great job growing organically? You're dumping a lot of your profits into producers and additional staff and support and marketing and advertising and lead generation. Continue to do it because it's working, you're growing. Shelve the acquisition strategy, or vice versa. You're doing a great job acquiring, you're not growing organically, but you're doing one.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's the FOMO is real and they hear other people are doing that, and I have to provide perspective to say, hey, listen, you've decided this path and it's working. Double down on it, because the alternative could mean you would take a hit on your growth and maybe not get the performance that you want. And the grass is not always greener. So it is, that's part of our job, is to help weigh. I don't make the decisions for any agency, but I help them weigh what's out there. And, the comparison game can be healthy, but it can also be a really big challenge, Yeah,
it's tough, because if you're someone who started your agency 5 to 10 years ago and you're growing it really well, you've added some good people, you've got a good culture, your organic growth, maybe your profitability is lagging, but just because you haven't grown into that yet, and you're looking at someone who's third generation, who has a large agency with producers that have been there for many years and a really good profit margin, they can go get a lot of debt and not worry about the cash flow.
Yeah, it's not apples to apples at all, right? Yeah, so you have to know where you are in the life cycle, and I think having a gut check with someone that can give you that perspective, and sometimes it's keep doing what you're doing, put your head down, you're on the right path, and being able to put that in a projection to say, oh, okay, I can see that if I keep on this path, the trajectory's there. Or put it on paper to say, if you keep doing this, you're not going to be where you need to be, and we've got to change something. So I think perspective is everything, and having someone who can look at many different agencies, apply it to yours, and give you that perspective is key.
In terms of an agency who's looking to acquire other agencies, and they're a little concerned about taking on debt as it relates to the value of their business, how do you help them see the influence that could have on their future enterprise value relative to the debt that they have?
Well, anyone who's working with us on a regular basis, there's an annual valuation that's being done, so they're able to see that kind of in real time to say, okay, here's the investment we made, this is what it did to my growth, this is what it did to my risk, this is what it did. So we do an ongoing valuation that's definitely in the projection. And sometimes it's the reason not to acquire. Like, there are times that it's just not the right fit. Or they're doing little and they will prevent themselves from being able to do an acquisition because of their debt load, and that's not the right move for them. So I think it's, again, that's part of our, it's not just day to day. We've got to give you the vision that's, what does 3 years look like? What does 5 years look like? Yeah. So,
and there's transactional costs and time and resources associated with buying a business, even if it's a small business, and sometimes more if it's a small business.
Yeah.
And so
oftentimes more.
Helping someone probably say, you could make money on this, but the opportunity cost is significant, because if something comes along that looks like this, and you could get better arbitrage and maybe more resources, additional carriers you don't have, you won't be able to do that.
Right. Or, the tax on your staff, and you're already understaffed, why in the world would you bring an acquisition and put that on top of them when you already are talking about, I don't have the capacity? Let's work on building the capacity and the process, and maybe tiering your accounts so the workload looks different, and then you're set to acquire. But, trying to do it all at the same time, that is not a good recipe. Right?
Yeah. This isn't a question, but it's a topic I'd love your feedback on.
Sure.
Maybe it is a question. And it's one of the most common issues / opportunities we see with multi-generational agencies, which there's a lot of them out there, where father-daughter, mother-son, father-son, whatever the dynamic is, there are two generations that typically the older generation owns the business. The younger generation works in the business, maybe has aspirations to take over that business. And the challenge that we see, and I'm sure you see it as much, if not more, is that in order for the one generation to pass it to the next, they would have to pass that on with a steep discount relative to what the market could generate, and at the same time burden the next generation with a significant amount of debt just to make that work. And so there's a struggle with, like, how do we make this work? Do you see that a lot?
All
and
the time.
How do you help someone through that?
So it really boils down to what's most important. And I often find myself in a situation where the financial advice that I'm giving is secondary to some emotional. Like, it's just almost like, I used to say I'd be super valuable if I had a finance degree and a law degree with what I do. And the reality is I'd be really, really valuable if I had a finance degree and a psychology degree to help with some of these decisions that you're making. And so typically we have to weigh, what does an internal look like? What is that discount? What does it mean to the exiting owner? What does that mean to the owner, the future owner? What kind of debt is that creating, even at a discount? And be honest, like, are you willing to take on the debt? Are you willing to take on the responsibility? What are the other things that are going on in your life? And oftentimes, we find a happy medium that you can get a higher price by selling partial agency, having that future generation be the successor that has ownership in maybe the buying or maybe some retention of the ownership of the agency, and we can create a win-win. And if that happens, we typically refer them to someone like you to go to market and find out who those buyers are. But the moment the incoming buyer's not willing to take the debt, or the external, the one that's exiting, it's too deep of a discount, we have to really get creative.